I'm Abhinav Hansaraman. I know all of you are booking tickets for next Sunday, but I tell you why you might want to consider reading the books as well, right? So I start off with this phrase called, I don't know how it's pronounced, it's Timeo Danaos dona ferentes, which means never trust the Greeks even when they come bearing gifts. This is, of course, not from the Odyssey. It comes from Virgil's Aeneid a couple of centuries later. But it's relevant because who is Odysseus? What is this man? Is he a morally grey character? Is he the hero that the story stands for? Or is he a flawed individual? Or he sleeps around in the 20 years he's not with his wife, but is always feels like, oh, I need to go back to Penelope, my beloved wife. Despite citing several children in the 20 years he's not there, right? Basic spoiler. The Odyssey is about Odysseus and whether he makes it back home. Let me tell you, he does make it back home. Number one. When do we start the story? Right? Troy has fallen. I am sure all of you have seen the Brad Pitt version of the movie. Troy has fallen. It's 11 for now. Oh yeah, we won the war. Great, let's go back home. We fought the war for 10 years. We have families back home. Let's go right now. Great. Now who can't get home? Odysseus, the man himself, can't get home for one of several reasons which we'll get home during the movie, because I won't spoil the movie watching experience for you guys. Penelope, his beautiful wife. I know all of you guys have been seeing the press releases of the Anne Hathaway photo. You know that's the woman he's essentially going back to after 20 years, right? So understand the emotions he's going through. Number 4. Oh, one interesting, important intervention here is that at the palace of Ithaca, Odysseus is the king of Ithaca. He leaves because Agamemnon, the king of men, calls for all of his troops to come and lay siege to Troy. But the moment Odysseus leaves, there are 108 suitors who line up to marry Penelope. She's a beautiful woman, of course. She holds a lot of power. But the real struggle for power here is the man who's married to Penelope gets to control Ithaca, a fairly wealthy kingdom at that point in time. A boy left behind, Telemachus. So at this point in time, when Odysseus leaves for the war, he's married to Penelope for barely a year. He may be married to Anne Hathaway, but he's only been married to her for 1 year. Telemachus, their son, is born 1 year, and right after the son is born, he leaves answering the call of Agamemnon. So Telemachus, the infant, is the last guy he's seen, and now he comes back 10 years after the war to figure out what's happening back home. So there are several movies, novels, religions where everybody contests about what the true interpretation of the book is, right? And of course, the book that's roughly 2,500, 2,700 years ago, everybody is confused about different interpretations of the work. But funnily enough, in the Odyssey, the first line itself has been subject to various interpretations across the centuries, right? The line 1 introduces Odysseus as Andra Polytropon, a man of many turns. Now, the difficulty with interpreting who the man himself is that it shapes the way you understand the novel or you understand the work for the remaining 24 chapters or part that you read it for. Now, there are 4 popular ways in which Andra of course means a man. Polytropon, a man of many turns, has been really interpreted in multiple ways. Let's look at a couple. Lattimore in 1965 looks at Polytropon to mean the man of many ways, right? This is a very fairly subtle vanilla interpretation of what this means. It could be a man who's capable of many things, a man who's gone through several turmoils on his way back home, etc. Then comes Robert Fagles in 1996, who says the man of twists and turns, right? Because think about it this way. As an army that's attacking Troy, whatever your causes are, you give a gift. When my friends give me a birthday gift, I expect it to be something nice. But if they pack my worst enemy within it, I certainly wouldn't be happy about it, right? So, Robert Fagles looks at Polytropon as a man of twists and turns. Then comes Emily Wilson. I know several of you are lurking on Reddit and Twitter finding out, oh, what is the problem with Emily Wilson? This is the translation that Nolan is relying upon. There are problems, but we'll come back to that later. Wilson, on the other hand, which is a very interesting interpretation of the word Polytropon, to say a complicated man. She says, here I come to tell you the story of a complicated man. And of course, Daniel Mendelsohn is a very interesting man because he translates the Odyssey verse for verse in the same meter that Odysseus had written in. For example, I will show to you later why Emily Wilson's translation feels much more natural to an English reader, right? On the other hand, Mendelsohn uses the same meter which the original Greek was written in. The beat under everything. So Mendelsohn, on one hand, uses the dactylic hexameter, which is the meter in which Homer wrote it. Can all of you please extend your index finger for 1 second? Yeah, as somebody spotted it. The dactyl is the Greek word for finger, which is why several words say pterodactyl. It all deals with the finger, right? Now, what does your index finger look like? It's long, short, right? Now, that is the meter in which Homer writes the Odyssey. For example, if you say, give me a pint of the stout and I'll sing you the song of a sailor. Ignore the sailor for a moment. I know it's a story about a sailor, but ignore it for a moment. The long, short, long, short, long, short. That is what is known as a dactyl. Now you put 6 units of those in one verse, that becomes a dactylic hexameter. I was trying to play the song Versace for you guys. You know how the song's chorus goes, right? It's Versace, I mean, better audio, etc. But long, short, long, short, long, short. That is exactly what a dactyl is. On the other hand, some of you who went to all of these liberal arts colleges and did humanities in classroom, you surely have read Shakespeare the way CBC students have not. Now, what is the meter in the Shakespeare writing? It's the iambic pentameter. The pentameter, of course, means there are 5 plus units in each line. But what does iambic mean? Right? It means a short sound followed by a long sound. Can somebody tell me how Eminem's Lose Yourself starts? I think. What are the words, right?
My palms are sweating.
He's ready, already. Exactly, right? That's purely written in the iambic. Number 1. Number 2, for some of you else who listen to Taylor Swift's Shake It Off, how does the song go, right? Exactly. You look at the next 3 lines that come after it, the way Taylor Swift ends each verse on a long shot is exactly what the iambic is. Now, there are several songs that you guys have been listening to in the last 20 odd years, and none of you are under 20. Most of these are written in the iambic because that's the sound that English literature has used for so long that it feels natural to us, right? So, interesting trivia for my friends here. There are several words that the Odyssey has given to us. Right? For example, the word nostalgia. So Homer had a preference for ending his verses on 2 words. The Greek word which was for home, no shit Sherlock. It's a story about a man coming back home. Of course, it's a word he prefers. Number 2 is the word nostos, which means a longing for a sense of things the way they used to be. And nostos is where the word nostalgia comes from, which is a homecoming pain. It comes up in the 17th century, but the original Greek usage we largely attribute to Homer. Number 2, Pallas Athena. Controversial interpretations if you are a nerd who's read too many translations of Homer or stories of Athena. But Pallas Athena, she acts as a mentor. She comes in hiding and helps Telemachus, the son of Odysseus, become a man in the sense that he really grows up developing his confidence, his ability to interact with other kingdoms, go after his long lost father after 10-15 years. That is where mentor comes from. Of course, Odyssey is a word that all of us have heard of. A lot of you, some of you from Chennai have perhaps missed the books of Odyssey. Then comes Vindarchi. Again, that's a phrase that is very specific to certain translations of the tree. One interesting writer who fails to use the word Vindarchi is Mendelsohn, who I'll come back to later. Silent call, very interesting. All of us throughout school, throughout college, through memes have been told, oh, the silent call is all these hot women singing great songs, therefore Odysseus is about to lose his way. That's actually incorrect. What is the real role of the silence, right? Homer, in his original work, never describes the way these characters play. Think about it. All of us have gone after hot people, gotten our hearts broken. But what Odysseus is really after is, after 15 years of the war, he's going back home and there is nobody who can relate to him. All of his men have been killed, save 6 to 12. Now at this point, those silence make specific calls saying, oh, I know what happened in Troy. I know the men you killed. I know the men you lost. And at 2 a.m. texting somebody saying you up. Are you thinking whether this person is hot? Or are you thinking, oh, this person really gets food, right? Then comes, of course, the phrase, drinking around the hard taste, which actually comes from the story of Evans.
I think so.
Now, why do all of us really like horror movies, right? Because these are mindfucks, let's be honest. There's all of these tropes of, oh, there's a frame, oh, there's a specific pattern, oh, there's an unreliable narrative, oh, there's a flashback, oh, you can start the story from the middle. Any structural thing that Nolan has built his career on over the last 20, 30 years, all of these you can trace back to Homer. Which is why, for one, I'm very excited to watch Nolan's Odyssey. Because they have essentially given him a blank check to make the movie he's built his career on for the last 30 years. Now, the monsters are hearsay because for time I'll skip this, but it's very interesting what the monsters in the story are. And for some of you who had aunts and uncles living in the US, went there for your vacations and said, oh, I've seen Ghostbusters in class. This whole concept of having one monster each week that you're defeating, etc., that comes from Homer's Odyssey, right? The women who run the plot. Again, all of you guys lurking on Twitter and Reddit, I know what you guys are up to. Why is this black woman playing Helena? Is this okay? Is this not a whatever modification of the story, etc.? Fair question. But think about who are the strong women who actually play critical parts in this story, right? For example, the way the book starts and the way the book ends is with Athena, right? She is the Greek goddess of wisdom, often referred to as the owl-faced woman, and she is critical to the entire story. Zendaya is playing her in the movie, so I'm really excited because Athena is a fantastic character for any actor. Then comes Penelope. As the earlier speaker was saying, you often see women as victims in movies says, oh shit, I can't do something, let me wait for a man to save me. Sure, Penelope was in troubled circumstances, but she managed to work her way around it, right? So Odysseus, the king of Ithaca, is the son of Dioetes, who's now an old, indisposed man who's unavailable for anything. He doesn't rule the country anymore. And Penelope not only has to save herself from the suitors, she also has to save the house, the kingdom, etc. The way she goes about this is she says, oh fine, let's presume Odysseus is dead. But oh no, what do? I have to marry one of you guys, I don't have an option. But give me a moment, let me build a beautiful stout-visiting Dioetes who's anyway going to die any moment. So let me build this, let me stitch together a tapestry, and then I'll marry one of you 108 suitors. But funnily enough, or cunningly enough, she manages to work on the shout every day during the day. But during the night, she unravels the shout so she gets a longer period of time. Right? Then you look at Cersei. Again, some of you may be aware of Cersei, or perhaps because you read the Madeline Miller book on her.
That's the message.
Sorry. I'll come back. Anyway, if you are somebody who's like the character of Cersei or Madeline Miller, I would really recommend you read the other books. It's the fantastic story of the romance between Achilles and Patroclus. Right? Now we go to Calypso. There are two ways to look at Calypso. Of course, she's the one who enslaves Odysseus for 7 years on her island, has sex with him every night. For some reason, Mendelsohn says, oh, people don't understand why it was very hard for Odysseus to do this. But think about this, right? To be very fair to Odysseus, this is a man who's been away from home for 15 years at this point in time. And he's forced to sleep with Calypso because at the end of the day, she's a demigod or a nymph herself. Then comes Helen, the controversial figure. I wait to read all of your takes on Twitter for this. But Helen is really the face that launched the thousand ships. She only has 2 speaking scenes in the Odyssey as Homer wrote it. But she is really the genesis of the Iliad and therefore the genesis of the Odyssey also, right? Then we come to the colonizer's case. So I'm sure some of you have read the story of the Cyclops. What happens is this. Cyclops, nice dude, chilling with his dads on an island. There are goats, they are rearing goats, they get the cheese, they eat it, nothing else. Perfect stoner location. That's what the Cyclops are on. Then comes Odyssey, the 12 men. Fine. The Cyclops are not really nice, cool guys. They eat a couple of human beings once in a while. But each of us hasn't done that in a while, right? Now what happens is this. In this case, Cyclops is trapped, etc. And Odysseus says, hey, look at these guys. There's so much land here for me to develop. There are so many developmental activities I can do here. What are these guys? Look at these uncivilized guys eating goat milk, eating goat cheese, doing nothing productive, right? But on the other hand, you think about what the Cyclops is really doing today. They're just a bunch of dudes hanging out on an island. If a man comes once in a while, they want to eat human beings, and otherwise they're chilling, eating the goat cheese, etc. Jokes aside, there's a serious way to look at the Odyssey, especially the role of the story of the Cyclops, as to whether it's really the Cyclops that's the monster here trying to meet up with all of these guys, or is it truly a guy coming here and doing a nice stoner vacation? Oh, because you guys have all come here on a Sunday evening, I know all of you guys are nerds who are waiting for puns, right? It's a very sad father joke, it's a dad joke, but this is perhaps the greatest joke ever written. So the Cyclops obviously has one eye, Cyclops, and 6 of Odysseus' men are trapped inside a cave, including Odysseus. Odysseus introduces himself to the Cyclops, saying, "Oh, I'm Otis," which is also the Greek word for no one. Now, once he starts attacking Cyclops, the other Cyclops enter and they try to figure out what's happening. So, out and outside the cave, when the cave is blocked, they ask, "Who is attacking you? Who's harming you?" The one Cyclops instead says, "Otis is hurting me. Otis is attacking me," which means no one. There is one interesting translation difference here. Is that some authors prefer to show the word Metis as against Otis. Metis and Otis think about the difference as saying between no one and anyone. Is anyone hurting you is the question that's asked, and you reply saying no one is hurting me. Of course your friends are going back to rolling their joint, right? Again, interesting if some of you guys don't want to discuss your political opinion in a forum of this nature. Okay. How does Odysseus prove who he is to the crowd once he's back home? Of course, with Penelope, there's a very moving scene where they talk about in the bedchamber that Odysseus built out of an olive tree, which only the two of them know about. It's a very moving romantic story. But of course, he has to prove his macho to the 108 suitors and the 2 friends he's got there, right? Now he shows that by showing, I am not making any references here. He says, "Oh, Odysseus, the old king who left, has a beautiful bow. None of these 108 suitors are able to spring it and shoot an arrow from it. His own son Telemachus tries, fails again. He comes close, of course, but fails again. But Odysseus manages to do it." Now, who else did this in our mythology? I have no comments on. Now comes the real thing. Okay, the first, again, this is for all of you guys going to watch the movie. The first half of the movie is what revolves around, oh, there are monsters, there will be these monsters, I'm cool, I'm well built, I'm jack, all of that. Cool. But anyway, the second half of the movie, or rather the last 12 chapters or 12 parts of the Odyssey, deal with this man who really has to face the truth of what happens when I go back home. Am I the same man when I go back home? I'm somebody who's been away from my family. I've been with my wife for a year. I've spent 20 years away from her. I don't know what my son looks like. I don't know if my mother, he finds out that his mother is dead when he goes to the underworld. I don't know if my father is alive. I don't know if my friends are there. Is the kingdom the same state? Agamemnon, king of men, is killed in his own bathroom by his wife and the wife's lover. Is that the one I'm going back to? That truly is the question that the Odyssey seeks to answer. Now, we would all think a large epic like the Odyssey would end with something heartwarming. Oh, Telemachus and Odyssey hug, Penelope and Odyssey hug, great family sorted. But that is not where it ends, right? Because there is some foreshadowing, or there is a prophecy in the movie that comes out which says that, okay, Odysseus, you get to go back home, you have angered the gods, you displeased them, but you have performed your sacrifices and you may go back home. But that is not where your life ends. The moment you end back home, you spend a short time with your family, and then you leave and you have to go find a land where nobody knows what the sea is. You will carry an oar on your shoulder and you will plant the oar when the other stranger asks you, "What are you doing with the winnowing fan mill here?" Right? Sure, funny story, but what this really stands for is Odysseus the sailor. He spent 20 years doing this. Odysseus the adventurer, Odysseus the hero, everything. But at the end of it, he has to separate the man himself from the story of the Odyssey himself. Odysseus is now a sailor without the ocean, without the oars. Now at this point, without his family, without his kingdom, without his children, who is Odysseus? That's where the story ends. Any questions?
Question. You can listen to the questions and then choose whose question you want to answer.
I'm sure most of you are not going to be as about it.
What's your opinion on how Rick Riordan writes about Greek mythology?
So I had a very different childhood where honestly I didn't grow up reading Greek Riordan. But if you're looking for say Greek translations of the Odyssey, I'm better equipped to answer you. In case that is your question as to what version of the Odyssey should I read, if you want a good, gripping retelling of the Odyssey, even though it's not a story itself, I would recommend you pick up the Stephen Fry version. But I'm so sorry, I'm not able to answer your question.
So you've not read any of it?
You haven't read any of the Odyssey?
No, I've not read the Odyssey.
How many people talk about the Odyssey?
It's an easy question. But I'll expect a good answer.
Thank you for your kindness, but sure.
So, you have read